Perfect. And we're live. Good morning. Happy Friday. It's December 20th, 2019. This will be the last Zoom for 2019 as I'll be taking off the next couple of weeks for vacation, for holidays, for resetting and reprogramming and re-everything. Inging. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it. And I think that our topic for today is probably perfect timing-wise and a perfect note to end the year on. Because I don't know about you all, but it's been an incredible year for me. There's been a lot of change this year. And it's probably every year that, of course, there's a lot of change, but I think the difference for me this year was that I've been able to embrace that change better than ever before and really kind of roll with the punches and look at things from the perspective of, instead of trying to sort of go against the grain, how do I roll with it? How do I evolve myself? How do I, choose a different reaction to things when things, put me off or get me upset, or I think somebody's doing something unfair, really trying to look at things more than ever before from the perspective of understanding the difference between what I can and can't control, right? And the reality of that one is that it comes down to really two basic things. I cannot control other people, places, and things. I can control myself and my reaction to those other people, places, and things. And that's been a big and very important theme for me this year. And I think we've, in the accounting industry, experienced the need to learn how to deal with this kind of thing maybe better than before, in particular because I know that a lot of people in our accounting community have been, frankly, let's just say, upset with some of the things that Intuit has done during the year, particularly pertaining to QuickBooks Live. And today I'm hoping to offer a little different perspective on how you can respond to that. And most recently, just to kind of bring it right into context, Intuit announced its new setup service, right? So for $50 plus a QuickBooks Online subscription, small businesses can get help setting their company up in QuickBooks Online. And as I was just saying, once again, as has been par for the course this year, many accountants are upset, feeling like Intuit is taking business away from them by offering comparable services at a price most accountants and bookkeepers couldn't possibly compete with, right? But what if, and here's what I want to offer as a little different perspective. And we went into this pretty deeply recently in our 97 and up group, right? What if instead of getting upset with Intuit, you decided, you know what, I'm going to learn from them. I'm going to start learning how to take a page from their book and how to start doing what they're doing. Because some of you are not going to like when I say this, but the reality is that all Intuit is doing is what any company is supposed to do, what each one of us is supposed to be doing, which is finding new ways to offer products and services at a fair price, right? That's my message to you. And that's where I turn this whole thing around and start thinking about what can I control? I have no control over what Intuit's doing. I have no ability. I mean, but I do have control over how I react to what Intuit's doing. And that's really the main key I want to stress here today. So finding new ways to offer products and services at a fair price, that's what Intuit's doing. That's what you should focus on learning how to do, right? What is Intuit doing here? Well, let me offer this perspective. What if you can compete with Intuit, right? And so first, before we get into that, what can we actually learn from Intuit here? Right? They're not going to make money charging $50 setup fees, but they will get new clients in the door by doing this. So the loss on this is really just a cost of acquisition of new customers, right? That is a classic marketing strategy that has been used for many, many, many years, and you should absolutely be doing the exact same thing, right? So how can you compete? Do the same thing. The one thing that's certain is you'll always be able to offer a more personalized service compared with a big company, right? That's always going to be true because you're a smaller company. You're going to be more agile. You're going to be better able to react and respond and give the clients the service that they're really looking for. That's worth something. In fact, that's worth a lot of some things. More specifically, it's worth dollar bills, right? So to get more specific and to take this one step further, you can offer a setup service to people, to these micro businesses for a fair price, because that's who's being targeted by this. It's these micro businesses who, from what Intuit themselves have shared, are companies who presumably would not have bothered with a bookkeeping system in the first place, right? Now, I want to remind you of something. In the 80s and 90s, there were companies like BMG Music who would offer you 10 cassettes in the 80s and 10 CDs in the 90s for a penny, right? These companies, of course, were losing money on this one transaction, but where they made the money was on the future purchases you would make from them, right? It was a club where you'd pay monthly and you had to order CDs or cassettes every single month. And so the point is to stop thinking only of the first transaction and start thinking of the next 100 or 1,000 transactions that can come after that, right? A setup client acquired today becomes a monthly client down the road. And you can offer to do the same setup, right? Get a company started with QuickBooks Online. Get them into your wholesale billing for QuickBooks Online. There's benefits to that besides actually having them as a client, because presumably at this stage, they're not going to pay you for bookkeeping services. You're going to set them up and they're going to do it themselves. But having them in your wholesale billing gives you points towards that elite QBO service, right? So there's other benefits to having as many clients as you can get into your QBO wholesale billing, right? Not last year, but the year before at one point, I was offering to just get people in at wholesale for a QuickBooks Online subscription, even if they weren't going to be a client, if they were doing it themselves, because guess who they're going to call when the time comes, when they do need somebody, when they realize, hey, I'm not a bookkeeper and I need more help. Of course, if they're in my wholesale account, I'm the first logical call they're going to make, right? So when they do need more ongoing help with their books, whom do you think they're going to call? They're going to call you. In the meantime, you'll have their information and you can certainly follow up with them and check in via email or otherwise and just say, hey, just checking in, seeing how things are going. They'll appreciate the follow-up. They'll appreciate knowing that there's an accounting or bookkeeping professional who's very available to them, who's reminding them that they're there and available to them if they do need help. Again, ensuring once again that you will be their first call when they do actually need some help with ongoing bookkeeping services, right? And then here's another option, okay? Because again, Intuit's point here is that these micro companies that QuickBooks Live is targeting would not otherwise bother with any kind of bookkeeping solution. Is it true that potentially clients who are beyond that are actually trickling into QuickBooks Live? Sure, probably the case, right? But again, I'm trying to get you to stop focusing on the negative and look at the positive side of this, which is that you can learn from Intuit and do exactly what Intuit's doing, and you can compete with them because, like I said before, you can probably offer a better service than they can because they're just a big, huge company. They're not going to be able to get as personal as you are with any client ever. That's the bottom line. That's the truth. I would say it directly to Intuit themselves. In fact, I'm sure there are people from Intuit who are either watching this and listening now or will eventually listen to it, and I'll probably get some interesting emails after today. But anyway, my goal here is to protect your interests as the accountants and bookkeepers in our community and to offer you a different perspective. So there's another option, right? Now, for many of these companies, accounting and bookkeeping is a foreign language. So what if you were able to give them something to get them started with that's much simpler than an actual accounting system, where they can track their financial transactions in a layout that's familiar to them, where under the hood, there are actually some pretty powerful reporting capabilities, and the cost is a mere $20 per month, right? And what I'm talking about is something I've been playing around with and working on, an Airtable that I'm going to show you in a few minutes, right? And that's what I did. I created what I'm calling a financial tracker in Airtable, and I populated it with data from a pretty old bank statement of mine. I played around with some sample reports. This will not replace QuickBooks Online. It will represent a stepping stone towards it. Okay, your micro business clients will find it easy to enter data in this system, and you'll easily be able to get what you need in terms of tracking income and expenses, as I'm going to show you. And you can easily build it out, adding additional tags to transactions or additional tracking and reporting, as you need. And quite frankly, what I'll do if I feel that this is going to work, and this has been a test I've been playing around with, is I'll sell the template. And I'll sell it for a fair price. You'll pay for it once, and you'll be able to get as many clients as you ever want to in it, because I'll show you once you have this base in Airtable, it's 2 clicks to duplicate it and replicate it for a different client. And your client, like I said, will just need to pay the $20 a month that I'm paying for Airtable right now. That will be the cost of them until they're ready to step up and use a real accounting product like QuickBooks Online. Okay, and of course, I can offer additional training and support at a fair price for any of you who care to have it. Now, bigger picture, some of you may have noticed I've been pretty hot on Airtable this year. And I believe at this point, especially because I've been playing so much with Airtable and getting deeper and deeper with it, I believe bigger picture, every accountant and bookkeeper out there should learn how to use Airtable. It is such a powerful tool. And the company raised a lot of money this year, so they're well funded to keep building it out and making it better and better and more powerful. So let's take a look at my screen, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. And here it is. And so, obviously I can't go through the process of showing you how to set all this up today. It's already taken, I've already logged quite a few hours, but I want to show you what this looks like, and I want to show you, some options for how you can, build this out further, right? So what I've got here is a transactions table, and what I'm calling a general ledger, okay? Over here I have essentially something like a chart of accounts, right? It's an account list, and it's got the account type, and I've taken it a step further and given it a bigger, broader sort of financial statement classification, right? You can put notes and attachments next to here. I figured can't hurt, doesn't cost any extra to have it, right? And that's basically what this table consists of. And then I have a names table where we have all the names and the type in a drop down. So any name I put in here, I can just associate it and say if this is a vendor or a customer or a credit card. I would love to be able to do something like that in QuickBooks Online and distinguish that this vendor is a credit card or a bank, right? To be able to make the names area or modules more customizable with Airtable. If I can conceive it, I can create it. I can make it be as customizable as I want it to be. That's one of the things I love about this, right? And so I want to walk through, I've purposely left, a couple dozen transactions here that I can go through coding for you so you can see this process and see what it looks like. And Matthew, I'm counting on you to interrupt me in case there are questions from anybody that need to be addressed, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing I'm going to do is I have a drop down for transaction type. Again, something I wish was more customizable in QuickBooks Online. I can distinguish that it's an ATM withdrawal or a credit card payment or a deposit or a starting balance or a vendor payment, which is what most of these are going to be at this point. Now, what just happened when I selected that is I have this view right now configured to be sorted by transaction type. So as soon as I put that in there, it sort of went away. It moved it. So I'm going to do it again on this one, and I'll have to go back and clean that one up. So as soon as I select vendor payment, it does this, record moved. I can click this little double arrow here to expand the dialog. And I'm going to show you exactly how this works from here, because it's really cool, I think. Okay, so the date, what I did, by the way, to get this data in here was I took the CSV file for that month's bank statement and just dropped it in here, of course, in accordance with the way I had laid out the columns, right? I'm going to leave the reference number blank. This is the description that came in from the bank. This is for Transaction Pro Importer, right? And so here for the name, I've got a link to the names table, and I'm going to type Transaction Pro, and they come up just like a drop-down in QuickBooks Online. It works, right? And you're also going to see that here it has a suggested target account that's associated with each name, and you're going to see where that comes into play in a second. The source account is the paid from account. The target account is the expense or whatever the target account is. So over here, it has the suggested target. Now, where this came from was this week, I was showing this to my friends in 97 and up, and Greg Cullup, who I don't see here this morning, had mentioned to me or asked me, does it do a lookup kind of like Matthew's vendor sync will do to let me know, hey, for this payee, here's the account it goes with, right?
And I'm lurking.
Oh, you are there. Great. So I thought about it for a minute, and this is, again, what I love about Airtable is how customizable it is I said, you know what? I can add that suggested target account right into the names table, which I did, and I can show you that in a minute. And so it brings this up as a suggested target. And the reason I don't want it to just populate on the target account, as I mentioned during our 97 and up call this week, is because once I set up a linked field, I can't overwrite this in case this time I want to use something else. So it comes up as a suggested target. That way I can use this. This is telling me what it normally would be. I can click right on here and type 508 Internet Applications and click it. By the way, if I'm in the normal row view, I can simply copy and paste that, and I'll show you that as well, right?
Hey, Seth, Dennis was asking, so is this something where you'd actually give it to your client to fill it in, or is this something that you're doing the work inside?
No, I would teach my client to enter the transactions, because that's what I'm trying to show you. It's built out so that it's really easy to do, right? You might just have to train them on how to add in a new account or a new name when there's something new, right? And that's what I'm going to do. And of course, if this sort of pans out and people are really interested, then I'll probably record some tutorial videos that will teach people how to use it. The idea is that you can get your micro business clients who don't want to or can't afford to pay you for monthly bookkeeping to get in here and use something so that it's like a step above from a shoebox. And then I'm going to show you before the end of the hour how once the data is populated, you can cut up some real good reports real easily. For these kinds of companies, all you really care about is being able to track their income and expenses. You probably don't even really need a balance sheet. We're talking mostly Schedule C's in these cases, right? So I just want to keep that sort of context in place here. Okay.
And how does this compare to doing it in Excel? Because a lot of people will do it at this level in Excel.
Stay with me on this. You're going to see Airtable has much more powerful capabilities than a spreadsheet does in terms of grouping and organizing the data later, right? So right now we're just at the stage of entering the data. Somebody had asked that in 97 Up, Caroline. I think it may have even been you. And, you know, and I explained it, you know, and I'm going to show you because the other day I didn't have all the setup done. Today I have all the setup done. So I'm going to be able to show you stuff that you can do here, particularly with the way you can group things that you could never do in a spreadsheet, right? A spreadsheet, you could do a pivot table, and you're going to see you can also do that here. So I've also included a tags field. Now, I haven't done anything with this, but that's something I've often wished I had in QuickBooks Online, where I can just tag things like if a client goes to a lot of events and I want to be able to tag transactions with that events. Right now, we might use classes for that, right? But I might already be using classes for something else, and I just want some other dimension that I can use to describe some other thing I want to describe. And so this is set up as a multi-select option, so I can have 4 or 5 tags associated with this transaction if I want to. And then later on with the reporting I'm going to show you that you can get out of this, you'll see how you can easily you know, create reports, grouping things or organizing things based on the tags that you've assigned. Of course, we can make comments over here, and that's about it for entering a transaction. And once I've done this and I click away, you'll see it goes away. So I'm going to turn off. What happens when you sort is by default, it has this option here that says keep sorted, right? So I'm going to turn that off, which means it'll sort by transaction type, but then as I make changes, it won't move things around like that, because I want to show you the other way to enter this without having to go into that full-blown dialogue. So we'll go vendor payments, and notice, you know, I can type the first few letters and it comes right up. Okay, and now, so this is actually not a vendor payment, this is a transfer. I want to go back. We're going to call this transfer. When it's a transfer, I'm the payee, and the target account is, or the suggested target is shareholder distributions. And like I said before, I can just copy and paste that over, right? If that's the thing that I want to use, right? Now, and this one's done. Now this one's been entered because all the, you know, everything's been set up for that. Okay, let me go back and see if I can find that other one that I did, or I'll just resort it by transaction type, or here's, and again, this is how you're going to see the power of Airtable, because if you remember the first one I did, I typed in the transaction type and then it went away before I could finish it. So what I'm actually looking for is something that's got a transaction type but won't have a name yet. So we can get to that very quickly using the filters. So where transaction type is not empty, right? But add a filter and name is empty. See how I was able to do that? In 2 seconds, I can find what I'm looking for, you know, based on knowing what criteria to look for, right? Now, this was a payment to HubDoc. Now, HubDoc is not in here yet. So now you're going to see how to set up a new name or payee or vendor, right? So first, I'm going to just type HubDoc in here. And notice it says no matching records, but I can click here where it says add a new record named HubDoc. I can also just hit enter. And initially, it just sticks that in there, okay? Now I'm going to click on this. And what it does is it drills in, so I can actually set up the name. It drills into the names table and into that dialog. So now here's where I say this is a vendor, okay? And the suggested target account for HubDoc is going to be Internet Applications, right? And of course, I can make notes about this as a payee and so on. And notice it shows me this dialog, it shows me this little arrow is pointing to the names table. So it's making it very clear to me that what I'm editing right now is a record from that table, even though the table I'm working in currently is the transactions table, right? So
hey, Seth, real quickly, did you say earlier that you can pull data into this using Transaction Pro Importer?
No, Transaction Pro Importer was just the transaction I was entering.
Okay. How do you get your data, your transactional data, into this?
Well, I said earlier, in this case, I copied and pasted from a CSV file.
Perfect.
So that's
Thank
probably
you.
how I do it going forward, is just get the CSV from the bank and copy and paste it in and teach the client how to do that.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's probably the easiest way for something like this. Like I said, it's not replacing an accounting solution. It's a stepping stone towards one, right? All right, so now that I've got that done, let's get rid of my filters. Okay, and so here I've got this one that I had just done prior. I fixed the one that I had started and didn't finish. Okay, and now let's get the next one done. Now another thing I want to show you. So here's one that's for Evernote. Let's say, and this is kind of like what we do in Excel using filters. Let's say I just want to find all the ones that say Evernote so I can code them all at once. So I'm going to drill into the description here just so I can highlight and Control C to copy the word Evernote, right? And then if I just right click, I can click up here where it says filter, but if I right click on the column I want to filter, then it's smart. It knows now when I click add filter that I want to add a filter on the description. I paste in Evernote, and now you can see what it looks like when I have two or more transactions that are essentially going to the same place. So these are both vendor payments, right? And I can come here and copy and paste. These are both going to Evernote, which has to be added. I'll hit enter. Then I just click right on where it says Evernote to drill in and finish setting up the name. The suggested target account is going to be, again, Internet Applications. And that's all I really need to do there. Okay. So over here, suggested target, I can paste that over, copy the name down, copy the target account. So quick copy and paste, and I can get bulk entries done, right? Makes it easy to do. Now I can just remove the filter. And if I want to, I can resort by transaction type just to kind of reset the list. And you can see we're almost done here, right? Now, Intuit, as you well know, there's a different number of things that I pay for Intuit, right? So this is the Intuit subscription that I pay. You can confirm from the amount. That's for all the QuickBooks Online subscriptions I was paying for at that time. That number has actually gotten a lot higher over the past year, a little over a year. Right? No, almost 2 years. This data is from January of 2018. So the transaction type is again going to be a vendor payment. The name, when I start typing into it, it's going to give me the different choices. I've set it up this way on purpose, where I've distinguished different payees for different things that I pay for from Intuit, especially so that I could use different associated suggested target accounts, right? So this is really the same thing as how QuickBooks will auto-suggest an account when you start bringing up a transaction, right? Now, by the way, already a lot of this, going back to your question, Carolyn, much harder to set up in an Excel spreadsheet. You would have to create data validations with list drop downs, not nearly as easy to do as it is to do in here. You can do it, and if you're somebody like me or Matthew, you can actually do it pretty easily. For most people, this would be much harder to do and maintain, right? To know how to go back into those data validation dialogues and add new items to it, not as easy to do as it is in Airtable. So this one was for the subscriptions, right? So I put my QBO fees to the Internet Applications account. So again, once I've found that, I can just copy and paste, and that one's done. Let's do the next one. This is 24-hour fitness. So 24-hour fitness. I'm going to add that in. Okay, that's my gym membership. And of course, that's not a business expense, so I'm going to link it to shareholder distributions as a target account, right? And of course, do as I say, not as I do. You simply shouldn't have something like that coming out through a business. But a long time ago, I gave them my business card as a payment method, so that's what I do. All right, here's one for Nimble. All right, we're going to add them, set them up. Okay, suggested target account, Internet Applications. All right, and copy and paste, and that's done. So to me, this I can teach, a non-accountant client to do very easily. A lot of it, once it's set up, is copy and paste, and then of course teaching them, how to set that up. So here, what I did was I just copied the name that I'm going to want, although it's sort of all caps, which I don't like. So Sushi, Fuji. All right, vendor, and of course this is going to go to meals.
So Seth, in this aspect of it, one of the biggest challenges we always have with clients is usually their inability to put proper names and categories to things and requiring us to put a lot of extra time and energy to clean it up. Mm-hmm. So how is this different from that aspect, though?
I mean, I think it's only different in that like I said before, this is a layout that's familiar to most people. Most people are familiar with a spreadsheet-like layout, and I think it's easier for a client to visualize something like this and what has to go where. You know, it's just simple and straightforward. You have columns and rows, and you put the appropriate information in the columns. And as you can see, for most of it, when I'm doing a vendor payment, I really have to enter the vendor payment and the name, and then copy the suggested target account over. And if for some reason I want to use a different target account, then it works the same way. I would just start typing the name of the account that I do want here, right? And that's as complicated as it gets. For somebody who's not an accountant, who doesn't necessarily understand the details of an accounting system, I think this is going to be a lot easier to get them to do. And I think they're going to, you know, frankly enjoy doing this a little bit more because they're going to understand it. It's not going to be so overwhelming with all these different screens and drop downs and, you know, and the other things. So again, I think for a micro business who otherwise wouldn't use something, I think it's going to be a little easier to get them to buy in on something like this, especially also because there's a lot of other really cool use cases for a product like Airtable.
So how does this relate to or compare to QuickBooks Self-Employment?
I'll be honest, I haven't looked at QuickBooks Self-Employed that much, but from what I understand, QuickBooks Self-Employed, you're still doing a lot of the same things you'd be doing in QBO Plus, entering checks and recording deposits and other things. So again, to me, I think this is going to be simpler for most clients to use.
Well, again, I don't like self-employment from the accounting standpoint. It's very limited as far as reports and things, but you can link your bank and everything comes in. You build your chart of accounts. You can set up bank rules.
Look, I'm not saying that that's not a good idea. I'm just saying that this is a potential alternative for small businesses who don't want to use an accounting product, who even with self-employed might feel overwhelmed by the prospect of having to learn how to use all that, having to do bank feeds. This is a simple, I can download a CSV and I can copy and paste most of it and do the additional coding. You know, and if I'm doing it every week, I might even be able to just hand key whatever came in that week from the CSV. But bear with me because I want to get through all this to show you what you can do once the data is all filled in, right? So I'm just going to sort of bang through the rest of this real quick. All right, vendor payments. This is a payment to the IRS. No, it's not IRS. I hate that they do that. Track 1099 puts IRS 1099 miscellaneous in the description, which always leads me to think it's an IRS payment instead of them. So track1099.com. And again, we're just going to set them up as a vendor. And this is internet applications because I'm using them to process 1099s. Copy that over, done. All right, now we have share file. Set them up. Vendor, internet. You can see most of my money gets spent on internet applications. It's my biggest line item other than payroll on my P&L. And I could split them out into more detailed categories, but I like doing that because I like then going into that expense account in QuickBooks and then grouping it by payee. And it just becomes very easy for me to see what I'm spending and what I'm spending it on in this area. And
I like to hide them so I don't have to face my problem.
No, I like seeing this stuff. So Pandora, you know, this is of course for music in the office. So we're going to call that entertainment. All right, there's LinkedIn. We're going to add this. Okay, and this one I can call this advertising marketing, right?
You might want to call Pandora Internet Application because entertainment's not deductible anymore.
Is it not deductible or just not 100% deductible?
Not deductible.
Okay, because I've heard it seemed like it went back and forth on that one.
No.
All right. So anyway, I'll go back and fix that. But suggested target account, and I don't deduct that stuff anymore. That's like I've gotten rid of all that nonsense. To me, it was just nonsense. Like, what am I trying to do here? Deduct based on $10 a month? You know, I'm going to get, what, $3? Not even. So anyway, now that we've added a new account, here's the new account dialog. Again, notice we're now linked to the accounts table. So the account type is going to be an expense, and the financial statement classification in this case is also going to be expense. All right, and that takes care of that. And then I'm back to here. All right, and so Alexa says we should change the account from entertainment to internet applications. So we're just going to click that out of there, type internet. Okay, and then we want to go back and change the suggested for Pandora.
So as you're coding that, Dennis had a comment that said, one concern I would have as a business owner is that if I were to have any questions, I would be concerned about support, taking into consideration that you're very busy. Would I have access to some written documentation in case you were unavailable to answer questions?
Well, okay, so it's very respectfully, Dennis, my comment to that, it starts out with the fact that that's the whole point, is that you're getting them into something like this because eventually they're going to need you. And that's when it's time for them to sign up and pay for support. But as I also mentioned earlier, what I'll do if people are actually interested in getting a hold of this and using it with their clients is I'll record some video tutorials that you can share with your clients that walk you through how to set everything up and how to do all the data entry. But again, the whole point of this is to act as a stepping stone, to give them something that they can use pretty easily, and then eventually the need's going to arise, and that's when they're going to call you and say, hey, I need help, and you can say, great, you know what, I can help you for $250 a month, because again, we're talking small businesses, very simple, maybe one bank account and maybe one credit card, right? We're not going to be doing sales taxes, bill pay, any of that. We're talking very simple businesses that are being sort of targeted for this kind of a thing. Right.
Another potential way to use this, which I know isn't the exact intention of it, but this actually provides a great way that they can be tracking this stuff throughout the year or having it organized that you could then at the end of the year or when they need it for, tax-wise, you could then take and build the financial accounting off of this if you needed to
pretty
get
easily
started into the platform.
Yeah, and keep in mind, you'll have access to this because the way you're going to set it up in Airtable, you're going to give it to them. They're going to have their own paid Airtable account, put it in a workspace, and they're going to add you back as a collaborator so that you can jump in and tweak it if you need to. Or if they say, hey, I can use, I can use another tracking dynamic, although with the tags, I think it's going to give them everything they need, but maybe they want something like classes, and it's very easy to add something like that. Okay, so Subway, we're going to add in. I'm going to leave the rest blank because I'm actually running short on time because we got a late start, and I want to show you the reporting side of this. So this was meals, right? Meals are still deductible, right? Do they take that away?
Only at 50%.
Well, that's always been the case.
And you have to identify the client.
That's also always been the case, and the purpose. Okay, so I'm going to leave the last few blank because I think we have enough here. And as you've already seen, as I've been going through this, you can do the filtering, you can do grouping, you can do sorting. And so let's look at what you can do with the grouping first of all. So just to give you a bigger picture context, and for those of you who might not have seen the other 10 or 20 things I've done on Airtable this year, what we're looking at here is what's called a base. This whole big thing is called a base, like a database, right? Each of these tabs across the top is a table, okay? And then within each table, you can define a different number of views. And these views can be the starting of what can act as reports. But again, stay with me on this because I'm going to show you it goes a lot deeper. So with the views, what I was able to do as I was playing around is I can create this one. This was my favorite one. I called it the profit and loss detail, and you'll see why. Because it gives you exactly that. I've got it grouped first by the financial statement classification and then by the target account. And you'll notice, as much as I've been vocal over the years about how much I hate account numbers, I used account numbers here because it forces the order that I want, right? And so I used account numbers to force the order. Otherwise, it's alphabetical. And I didn't have a way, short of using account numbers, to make sure that, for example, income accounts fell out on top and expenses below, right? So what I have now is I have accounting services in this grouping. I have affiliate commissions. I have subscription income. I have training revenue, right? It's all broken out. And then here come the expenses, right? The bank service fees, the communications, the computer expenses, education and training, and so on, right? Internet applications, as you can see, is the big one, right? The meals. So right here, and I can easily, by the way, export this to a CSV. So going back to Matthew's comment, if I wanted to take this data and get it into some other system, very, very easy to do, right? Right here. There's also things we can do with Zapier. you know, let's say your client really, because I've seen this where you think it's so easy to use QuickBooks Self-Employed, but try and get a non-accountant or bookkeeper business owner to see it that way. You're going to have a hard time in a lot of cases. But this, I think they'll be able to get with. But you can even create a zap that says when they add this kind of transaction, add the corresponding appropriate transaction in QBO. So there's a lot of ways you can go with this to start moving them from something like this to an actual accounting system, okay? So this is one example, just simply using the groupings. And right now, all I have in here is a single month's worth of data, but obviously, if you had more than that, you can use your filters to chisel it down to a specific date range, right? So you would add a filter where the date is, and there's lots of choices. Notice these are all drop downs. So if I click is, I can do within, before, on or after, on or before, and so on. So I can get as specific as I need to be to chisel this data down to a specific date range, thereby getting effectively a report on the data over a specified period of time. But wait, there's more, because now enter blocks. And one of the things that Airtable does that's pretty cool with blocks is it can do simple pivot tables, not as sophisticated as what you can do with Google Sheets or Excel, but you can get a basic layout. So here's an example, and I'll expand this so you can actually see it, of where I can get a report that shows me every different payee. Okay, and then just for kicks, I broke it down by transaction type, right? Vendor, payments, payroll. This is an accounting customer with, you know, money coming in the form of a deposit for $5,000, transfers, and so on. The other thing, if I scroll down for a minute, that I was able to do is able to create these summaries where it's showing me the revenue for the period is 24,000, the expenses are 31, and the net income is 21,100, right? So right here, I've created a dashboard, probably the most important information that the client's going to want to, you know about, right? And each of these, of course, can be configured to work off of a particular view. So I could take this profit and loss detail, right? And what I can do is I can duplicate this view, and I can say profit and loss detail, January 2018. Okay, and then I'll close this for a minute, and I'll add in one more filter where I do restrict the date range for just January. So I'm going to say on or after, right, 01/01/18. I think that'll work. Kind of worked. Okay, and then we're going to add one more filter, and it's going to be date is on or before. I think you can type a search here. Before, so is on or before. And what I'll do, just to save a second of time, is copy that in and then change it to the 31st, right? So now this is something you would do, not your client, but now I've created this view that's going to be restricted always to profit and loss detail January 2018. I can go back to my blocks here. And when I'm reporting on revenue, I can go into the settings. And see how it says the table is transactions? In this case, the view is income. I can change this to profit and loss detail January 2018. Now, if I do that now, it's going to actually give me the net income, not the revenue. I'd have to take that a step further and chisel it down to just revenue. But what I'm hoping you'll get out of this sort of bigger picture is that you have pretty decent, especially for what we're talking about here, reporting capabilities, so that you can create these kind of dashboards that your clients can see, because that's what, if they even care beyond knowing that they have something to track the stuff so they can get a tax return done, then you can give them a little bit more in terms of some kind of reporting. And here's a rough profit and loss that I was able to create with this, on where it shows the accounting services, right? So this is all the revenue. I thought this was actually showing everything originally. The view is the profit and loss. It should be showing the target account. It's showing when you choose a column grouping on the pivot table, that's a date. It gives you the option to bucket values different ways, right? So month of the year is what I chose. So as the year continues, you'll see January in a column alongside February and so on. It's like getting a profit and loss by month in in QBO when you do that kind of thing. I am not sure why it's not showing me the expenses. It's looking at the profit and loss view. Let me make sure I haven't done something to that view. So it's showing income or expenses, so it's showing both. So I'd have to troubleshoot this. Like I said, this is a work in progress, but hopefully now you can see, and start getting some ideas about how you can use this. You can add a search block so you can start searching for things to drill around very easily. By the way, I was playing around with that a little bit last night. So you can get around. And like I said, the idea here is to create a stepping stone towards a company that otherwise wouldn't be inclined to use anything, and get them to use something like this before they feel ready to, to graduate up into something like QuickBooks Online, or even QuickBooks Online Essentials, or Self-Employed, or whatever they're going to use. This also has a pretty good mobile app. It's not going to be great for adding new things, but if they just need to quickly log a transaction, the mobile app works pretty well on this kind of thing. So in a nutshell, that's what I'm talking about. And, again, just to recap, bigger picture, what I was sharing about from the beginning is, I hope that you'll think about things a little differently, in terms of the fact that instead of getting upset about what Intuit's doing with QuickBooks Live or otherwise, that you'll think about this instead as an opportunity, a way to learn to do what Intuit's doing and do it for yourselves and for your own business. A way to say, you know what, let me not get mad at them. Let me learn from them and figure out what my version of that looks like. Because like I said in the beginning, Intuit's only doing what every business should do, which is finding newer and better ways of acquiring clients and increasing revenues. So we got a couple more minutes. If people have any more questions, it looks like Matthew had to take off. I'm looking in the chat. I just want to see if there's anything else in the Facebook feed. I don't see anything. If anybody wants to unmute.
I'm just going to say I'm amazed at how much you progressed from what you showed us yesterday. You did an amazing job in a very short period of time.
Thank you. I stayed up till 9:30 last night working on it.
Well, I think it's worth spending the time to learn it, because again, more tools in your toolbox, and you might have a client that will work for.
I think it's worth it, and it's fun, and I think it's like I said, I think everybody should be looking at learning how to use a tool like this in the accounting and bookkeeping world, because it can do some really powerful things. It can you can create forms off of this. So if you have data that you need to gather from your clients that will eventually turn into a transaction in QBO, this is a great way to capture it using forms, and then creating a Zap and Zapier, where you can easily take data from Airtable and use Zapier to create a sales receipt in QBO, or to create an expense, or whatever kind of transaction you want to create, because all of that's open, with Zapier. And with Airtable, you can lay it out in a way that makes it easy for your client to give you that data, and then you can automate the process of getting that data turned into an actual transaction. This way, you don't have to give your clients access to QBO necessarily, where they can get in there and screw things up. You can give them, a tool they can use to get the data in there, right?
Can you explain again how you structure it? You said they have the account and then they invite you in as a collaborator?
So you're going to have the template, right? And then if your client wants to take advantage of this, you're going to have them set up their own paid account with Airtable. And when you have an Airtable account, you get workspaces. And workspaces are sort of like a billable unit, let's just call it, right? And so they're going to share a workspace with you.
Is that like Smartsheets?
It's a little different because, again, Smartsheet, you can have an infinite number of workspaces and it doesn't impact your billing. With Airtable, each workspace is a billable unit, right? But again, just in the interest of keeping it simple, they're going to create their Airtable account and they're going to have their workspace, their default workspace that goes with their account. They're probably not going to even get into trying to create more workspaces. Bottom line, they just have to share their main workspace with you, and then you can make a copy of the Airtable base and put that copy into their workspace, and they now become the owner of that workspace with you as a collaborator. And then you can get them trained, have them start entering transactions, maybe do, again, if we're talking about doing a setup for $50, you could probably even charge $100. You could probably charge more than what Intuit's charging because, again, more personalized service, right? But you can use that setup fee to spend an hour with them logged in remotely or whatever to train them on it. Like I said, I'll probably do some tutorial videos if people are really interested in this that you can also share with them that'll teach them how to use the tool. And then bottom line, so going back to the workflow, they create a workspace, add you as a collaborator, you put the template into their workspace, a blank version of it, and then they can get to work and start filling it out and adding things in. And then you go in there and, like I said, you do the initial support, get them set up and running. And then if they need you for more help, going back to Dennis's question from earlier, if they need support, they can pay you for support. They can pay you whatever you're inclined to charge them for an hour of support to get in there and help them with it a little bit further. And you'll have access to it, so you can get in there and tweak it and do whatever you need to do with it.
Okay.
So, and obviously, if anybody's interested in this, just let me know, and I'll obviously work with you and help you and make sure that you understand exactly how it works and how to get your client set up with it, right? The main thing is, like I said, it's just an option. I think it's, for me, it's fun to play with this kind of stuff and figure out ways to do stuff like this. But I think like I said, I think the layout of a spreadsheet will resonate with a lot of business owners, because most business owners are very familiar with a spreadsheet layout, where they're not necessarily familiar with nor understand, an accounting system layout. They don't understand charts of accounts and things like that. But here, I think it's very easy to understand. Here's a transaction list. You're going to enter your transactions here. We've got a table that's got the accounts, and we've got a table that's got the names. And that's about as complicated as it needs to get. Because what I didn't actually show you is, if they wanted to, they could just go in here to the names table, right? I've added a few here, so it's actually set and to stay sorted by name, right? So I can just go down here. I can turn that off even, so it doesn't keep trying to reorder things. And just boom, I can hit the plus sign and set up a new vendor right here very easily, right? So you teach them to do that as well. You teach them to go in here and set up the accounts. Although the accounts is initially, you may want to set up for them, because that goes back to the same thing. They're not going to, they're not going to understand a chart of accounts. They're not going to understand financial statement classifications. So you might have to do some of that setup with them. Diana is asking, how much do I think you could charge? Well, again, you're just charging them a setup fee and giving them some training on this, right? The idea is to get them into your world, to lower your cost of acquisition, right? By getting them into something like this, getting them set up, and then charging them when they call you for support. How much you charge for support is whatever you're accustomed to normally charging. If somebody wants to call you up and have you log in remotely with them for an hour, for that I charge $325. And I have a whole plan that scales if they want more hours, right, of support. I haven't figured out how to value price that. I know a lot of my value pricing friends are going to have a million ideas. I promise you, I've played with them all. They don't work. The clients, what resonates with the clients on a support plan is they want to know, how many hours do I get and how much is that going to cost, right? And so that's how I do live training or support. There's no other way. There's no way to say, well, you're going to get, you're going to get unlimited support for a set price per month. Potentially I will lose my shirt with people on that, or I'd have to price it so high that nobody would want to pay for it, right? Or I have to put a limit on it, which translates it right back to an hourly model. So anyway, so that's my quick rant on the whole, you should value price this. You can't value price it. I'm sorry. You just can't. I challenge Ron or Ed to prove otherwise to me on a training model. On a consulting model, I totally agree. It can and should be value priced. So how much do I think I could charge? Again, they're gonna pay the $20 a month just to have Airtable and to use this system. I think the setup fee, the point is to be a little bit competitive with Intuit. So you could charge the same $50 Intuit's charging, or maybe you could charge $100, because you can argue that you're giving them something much more personalized, and and they have an avenue at least to get direct support from you when they need it. Whereas with QuickBooks Live, as I understand it, it's whoever happens to be there at the time they go to get the support. So it's not going to be a dedicated person who's going to get real familiar with their case over time. So you could justify charging a little bit more, I think, on that basis. All right. Anyone else? Alexa says it inspires me to dig into Airtable again. It's such a cool product. I plan on doing a lot with it. I plan on rolling out a whole course and plan with respect to Airtable. I'd actually started to, and I've got a secret group on Facebook that's designed to build a community of people who want to, pay to get some help and support from me and learn how to use Airtable and learn how to build different things in Airtable. 97 and up members have access to it already, but we haven't really done anything with it yet. But I definitely plan on starting with that at some point, during the coming year. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I hope you all have an incredible holiday. I hope you all take some time like I'm doing, take some downtime, enjoy, relax, unplug. That's really so important for so many of us who I know, I know a lot of you are like me. We work crazy hours. Now's the time to just slow down and take it easy and take a breath. And I really hope that that you're all going to do that.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy
See you
New
next
Year.
year.
See you next year.